The sun was a merciless orb, scorching the cracked earth of the Burkina Faso-Ghana border. Dust swirled in lazy eddies, kicked up by the tires of battered trucks and the shuffling feet of travelers. Captain Amadou Cohn stepped from his unmarked Jeep, his boots sinking slightly into the red dirt. His khaki uniform clung to his skin, damp with sweat despite the early hour. This wasn't his usual posting. A cryptic message from headquarters had pulled him from his desk in Ouagadougou to this remote checkpoint, a place where the line between nations blurred into a haze of commerce, desperation, and unspoken tension. The checkpoint was a chaotic symphony of voiceless traders haggling over sacks of grain, children darting through the crowd, and border guards barking orders in a mix of French, Twi, and broken English. Amadou's eyes scanned the scene, his senses sharpened by years of navigating the Sahel's volatile edges. Something was off. The guards were too tense, their hands lingering near their rifles. The vendors' chatter felt forced, their smiles brittle. And then there was a sound, a faint, high-pitched wail almost lost in the din, but unmistakable. It was the cry of a child, raw and unfiltered, cutting through the clamor like a warning bell. Amadou's instincts flared. He moved toward the sound, weaving through the crowd with the ease of a man who knew how to blend in, his civilian clothes, jeans, and a faded linen shirt helped him melt into the throng, though his broad shoulders and purposeful stride marked him as someone not to be trifled with. The crying grew louder as he approached a cluster of shipping containers, their rusted surfaces baking in the heat. Behind one, tucked into a sliver of shade, he found her. She was small, no older than 10. Her thin frame hunched against the containers. Corrugated wall. Her clothes were ragged, a patchwork of dust and tears. In her hands, she clutched a wooden carving, a crude figure of a woman, its edges worn smooth from years of handling. Her sobs were quieter now, but her eyes were wide, darting like a cornered animal's. Amadou crouched, keeping his distance to avoid startling her. "Hello," he said softly in French, then switched to more. "I'm Amadou." "What's your name?" The girl's gaze flicked up, wary but curious. "Zara," she whispered, her voice barely carrying over the hum of the checkpoint. "Zara," he repeated, offering a small smile. "That's a strong name. Can you tell me why you're here alone?" Her story came in fragments, each word trembling with fear. She'd been traveling with her older brother, Kofi, from their village in northern Ghana to visit their aunt in Burkina Faso. It was a journey they'd made before, a familiar trek across the porous border. But this time, their bus had been stopped just before dawn. A few kilometers from the checkpoint, men with guns masked, silent had boarded, searching for something. In the chaos, Zara had been separated from Kofi. She'd run, hiding in ditches and scrubland until she stumbled into the checkpoint, alone and terrified. "They took him," she said, her fingers tightening around the wooden figure. "They knew his name?" "They said, 'Kofi Mensah, you're coming with us.'" "I don't know why." Amadou's jaw tightened. This wasn't a random robbery. The precision of the attack, the targeting of a specific person, it pointed to something organized. Deliberate. He'd seen it before. Criminal networks, insurgents, or worse, operating in the lawless stretches of the borderlands. But a boy? What could they want with a teenager from a rural village? "Zara, listen to me," he said, his voice steady but warm. "You're safe now. I'm going to find your brother, but I need you to tell me everything you remember. Every detail, no matter how small." She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. As she recounted the attack, the men's accents, the way they moved, the black SUV waiting on the road, Amadou's mind raced. This was no ordinary crime. The border region was a crucible for illicit activity, from smuggling to trafficking to political intrigue. And now a boy had been taken, his name known to his captors. It felt personal, like the opening move in a larger game. He led Zara to the checkpoint's administrative office, a squat concrete building with peeling paint and a single rattling fan. Inside, Inspector Yusuf, a grizzled man with a permanent scowl, was sorting through a pile of passports. He glanced up as Amadou entered, his expression souring further when he saw the girl. "Captain Cohn," Yusuf said, leaning back in his chair. "I didn't know you were slumming it with us today." "What's this about?" Amadou ignored the jab. "This girl's brother was taken by armed men a few kilometers from here. I need to see the incident reports for the past month. Anything involving targeted abductions or robberies on the roads." Yusuf's eyes narrowed. "You're chasing ghosts, Captain. These things happen. Bandits, smugglers, they hit travelers, take what they want, and disappear. The boy's probably long gone." "Show me the reports," Amadou said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Grumbling, Yusuf pulled a stack of dog-eared files from a drawer. Amadou spread them across the desk, scanning the pages with practiced efficiency. The pattern was unmistakable. Over the past 8 weeks, there had been a dozen similar incidents travelers singled out. Often by name, their belongings searched or confiscated. Some were released, shaken but alive. Others, like Kofi, had vanished. The reports were frustratingly vague, with little follow-up or investigation. Either the local authorities were incompetent, or someone was deliberately looking the other way. Zara, sitting quietly with a cup of water, spoke up. They were looking for something in his bag. They didn't take money or phones from anyone else, just his bag. Amadou turned to her. "Did Kofi ever talk about carrying something important? Papers? A package? Anything unusual?" She hesitated, her fingers tracing the carving screws. He said he was helping someone. "A man from the city came to our village last month. He gave Kofi a bag and told him to keep it safe. To bring it to our aunt in Burkina Faso. Kofi didn't tell me what was inside, but he was scared. He said it was dangerous." Amadou exchanged a glance with Yusuf, whose scowl had deepened. "What kind of man?" Amadou asked. "Tall, well-dressed. He spoke like he was important. Kofi said he worked for the government, but not to tell anyone." The room grew quiet, the fans hummed filling the silence. Amadou's mind churned. A government official, a targeted abduction, a bag with unknown contents. This was no random crime. It was connected to something bigger, something that reached beyond. "The dusty roads of the borderlands, Inspector," Amadou said, standing. "I'm taking Zara to her village to find out more. Keep this quiet. No reports, no radio chatter." Yusuf raised an eyebrow. "You're stepping on toes, Captain. This isn't your jurisdiction." "It is now," Amadou replied, guiding Zara toward the door. Outside, the checkpoint was still a hive of activity, but Amadou's focus was singular. He helped Zara into the jeep, her small frame barely filling the passenger seat. As they pulled away, he caught her watching him, her eyes holding a mix of fear and hope. The road to Zara's village, a cluster of mud brick homes called Kalgun, was a winding dirt track flanked by acacia trees and thorny scrub. Amadou drove in silence, his thoughts racing. If Kofi was carrying something valuable, documents, evidence, or worse, it explained the abduction. But why a boy? Why not a courier or a soldier? The answer lay in Kalgun and whatever Kofi had. Left behind Dot as they neared the village, Zara pointed to a narrow path veering off the main road. "That's the way to our house," she said. "It's the one with the red roof." Amadou slowed the jeep, his senses on high alert. The village was eerily still, the air thick with the scent of smoke. As they rounded a bend, he saw why. Several houses were smoldering, their thatched roofs reduced to ash. Tire tracks crisscrossed the dirt, and a group of men armed alert stood near the center of the village. They weren't locals. Their gear was too clean, their movements too disciplined. "Stay down," Amadou whispered, pulling the jeep behind a cluster of boulders. He grabbed his binoculars and studied the scene. The men were focused on a house with a red tin roof, Zara's home. They were searching it, methodically tearing through furniture and walls. A woman's voice, faint but defiant, carried from inside. "That's Auntie," Zara gasped, her voice trembling. "They have her too." Amadou's grip tightened on the binoculars. The situation was worse than he had feared. These weren't bandits, they were professionals, likely mercenaries or private security. And they were after the same thing he was. Whatever Kofi had been carrying. Zara, he said, keeping his voice low. Did Kofi ever show you where he kept that bag? A hiding place, maybe? She nodded, her eyes fixed on the house. Under the floor in his room. There's a loose board near the window. He showed me once, but he said never to touch it. Amadou's mind raced. The house was heavily guarded, but the men hadn't found the bag yet. Otherwise, they'd be gone. He needed to get inside, but a frontal approach was suicide. He scanned the village, noting a network of narrow alleys and irrigation channels that snaked behind the houses. It was risky, but it was his only shot. Listen carefully. He told Zara, I'm going to get that bag and check on your aunt. You stay here, keep the jeep ready. If you hear shooting or see me running, you drive back to the checkpoint and tell Inspector Yusuf to call this number. He scribbled a number on a scrap of paper, his contact in Ouagadougou, Major DA. One of the few people he trusted. Zara clutched the paper, her eyes wide. What if you don't come back? I will, he said, forcing a confidence he didn't fully feel. But if I don't, you get to Yusuf. Promise me. She nodded, her jaw set. Promise. Amadou slipped out of the jeep, moving low through the scrub. The irrigation channel was shallow, but provided enough cover to reach the back of the house undetected. The men were focused on the front, their voices rising in frustration as they interrogated Zara's aunt. Amadou found the back window, its wooden shutter ajar. He eased it open and slid inside, landing softly in a small bedroom. The room was a mess of clothes strewn across the floor. A mattress slashed open. Amadou moved to the window Zara had described, feeling along the floorboards until one gave slightly. Under his fingers, he pried it up, revealing a small cavity. Inside was a leather satchel, heavy with papers. He didn't have time to check its contents, but its weight told him it was what the men were after. Voices approached the bedroom door. Amadou tucked the satchel under his shirt and replaced the floorboard, just as two men entered. They froze. Surprised to see him, Amadou didn't hesitate. He lunged at the closer one, driving his fist into the man's jaw. The second reached for his gun, but Amadou was faster, tackling him to the ground. A brief struggle ended with both men unconscious, their weapons scattered. He dragged them behind a wardrobe and slipped into the hallway. The front room was a scene of chaos. Zara's aunt, a stout woman with graying hair, was tied to a chair, her face bruised but defiant. Three more men stood over her, one barking questions in French. Where's the bag? We know Mensa left it here. I told you I don't know. She snapped, her voice hoarse. Amadou weighed his options. He had the satchel, but getting the woman out would be nearly impossible with so many guards. He needed distraction. Spotting a stack of crates near the door, he crept closer, pulling a lighter from his pocket. The crates were filled with dry straw perfect. He flicked the lighter, setting the straw ablaze. The flames caught quickly, sending smoke billowing through the room. Fire. He shouted, darting back to the bedroom as the men scrambled. In the confusion, he untied Zara's aunt, pulling her toward the back window. She was dazed but followed, her strength surprising for her age. Who are you? She whispered as they climbed out. Amadou Cone, Zara sent me. Her eyes widened, but there was no time for questions. They slipped into the irrigation channel, the fire now drawing shouts from the village. Amadou led her to the jeep where Zara waited, her face lighting up at the sight of her aunt. Auntie. She cried, throwing her arms around her. No time. Amadou said, starting the engine. We need to move. The jeep roared to life, kicking up dust as they sped away. Behind them, the village glowed orange, the fire spreading. Amadou drove hard, taking a circuitous route to avoid pursuit. When they were a safe distance away, he pulled over and opened the satchel. Inside were documents, ledgers, photographs, and a handwritten journal. Skimming them, he saw names, dates, and transactions, a smuggling network involving high-ranking officials in both Burkina Faso and Ghana, funneling weapons and drugs through the border. Kofi's father, it seemed, had been a whistleblower, killed. For what he knew, Kofi had been carrying his father's evidence, meant to be delivered to a contact in Burkina Faso. Amadou's phone buzzed. It was Major Ndeye. Cone, where are you? There's chatter on the radio. Someone's looking for you. I've got evidence, Amadou said, keeping his voice low. A smuggling ring tied to people in the capital. They took a boy, Kofi. Mensa, to get to it. Naye's voice was grim. You're in deep, Amadou. Get to Ouagadougou. I'll arrange protection, but you need to move fast and trust no one. Amadou hung up, looking at Zara and her aunt. We're not safe yet. He said, but I'm getting you to your family and I'm going to make sure these people pay. Zara clutched her wooden carving, her eyes steady. You promised you'd find Kofi too. He nodded, the weight of that promise settling over him. I will. The road to Ouagadougou was long and fraught with danger checkpoints, informants, and the ever-present threat of the men who wanted the satchel. But Amadou was no stranger to impossible odds. With Zara's courage and the evidence in his hands, he had a fighting chance to expose the truth and bring a boy back to his sister. The desert stretched ahead, vast and unforgiving, but so was Amadou's resolve. The journey was only beginning. Over the next days, Amadou would navigate a web of corruption, betrayal and violence, each step bringing him closer to Kofi and the men who had torn a family apart. He would face ambushes in moonless nights, tense standoffs in crowded markets, and whispered deals in smoky backrooms. Through it all, Zara's trust would be his anchor, her carved figure a reminder of why he fought. The conspiracy reached higher than he could have imagined, implicating ministers, generals, and foreign operatives. But Amadou Cone was not a man to back down. By the time the dust settled, he would either bring down a criminal empire or become its latest victim. For now, though, he drove the Jeep's headlights cutting through the darkness, carrying a girl, her aunt, and a bag of secrets toward an uncertain future.